Welcome to the Digital Egghead lesson on Photoshop interface. Today we're going to talk about Photoshop's main interface and the options that are available there, just to get started and start getting comfortable with what Photoshop has to offer. The first thing I'd like to point out is that Photoshop has a great looking dark gray kind of interface. It's a drastic improvement over what we had for many years. A long time ago, Photoshop had a light colored interface that looked like this. And while that was fine, the new darker interface really allows for your work, the images you're working on, to pop, to stand out against the background, and allows you to kind of focus more on your work rather than having all the interface elements also in your face. So that's really great. It's a great improvement. Also wanted to let you guys know that I put together kind of a cheat sheet on the Photoshop interface just as a quick reference point for seeing what things do. And that looks like this. And I've attached that to this lesson as a resource, so you can download that, print it, look at it, whatever, or not use it if you don't need it. But I would like, if you guys give me feedback, let me know. Is this something cool? Is it useful? What are your thoughts? The first thing that I'll talk about is the menu bar. Up in the top upper left, we have the Photoshop menu bar. This is where you're going to find every option imaginable that's related to this program. This is just pretty much like any menu bar that you've seen on any other program that you're used to. I don't think there's anybody taking this course that isn't familiar with this, so I won't spend too much time talking about that. It's just a standard menu bar. Then over on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see the Photoshop Tool Palette. The Tool Palette is where you're going to find all the tools that you're going to use to edit your images. There's a plethora of things over here, and we're going to talk about some of the main ones in just a little bit. Then, up underneath the Photoshop menu bar, we have what's called the Tool Options. And you'll see there are a bunch of options here that are related to the current tool that you'll have selected. So notice as I select a different tool, the options up here change. And we'll talk about the options available for each of these tools as we go through them. But it's important to know that just whichever tool you have active, this is where you're going to control all the different options available for that tool. Then over in the center of the screen, you'll see where I have my image, this image of mountains with the ocean behind them. This is called the document window. This is where any document that you have open is going to be displayed. Now Photoshop by default opens your documents in a tabbed document window, which means that you'll see there are tabs up here at the top, and you can tab between the different images or different documents that you have open. Now that's one way that they allow you to do it. Personally, I prefer to have them undocked in what's called floating windows, and what that means is that you can actually grab the tab, drag it out, and then have it in its own window. The reason I find that to be useful is because if I wanted to be able to drag images from one to the other, I can simply and quickly do that. Another thing is that you can tab them in groups by what you're working on. If you have several images that are kind of all parts of certain groups, you can just drag it over, dock it in within the window that it's on. And then you can have several different tabbed window groups, however you like to work that. Or you can leave them up here as tabs in the main dock, and that's entirely up to you. Once you have them up here, they are just like most any other program. You can slide your tabs around and move them around however you want. One interesting little thing of note is in your tab, you'll see once you start working on an image, this little asterisk shows up here. What that means is that the image is not saved currently. So if I save the image, it saves, and then the asterisk is gone. If I do anything to the image, now the asterisk is back, showing me that I need to save it again. One very handy thing that I use a lot in Photoshop is the ruler guides. These are not open by default when you first open up Photoshop, but you can come up here into the View menu option and turn on rulers. When you do that, you'll see the rulers pop up. And what this allows you to do is to just click inside of them, drag out a guide, and you can set up rulers for very specific measurements. And you can also change whether you want your rulers to display in pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, and percent. This is going to be dependent on what type of document you're working on or what you need it to be. Generally, I'm in pixels, but there are uses for all the different measurements. Now, I pointed out that there are the different documents, different images that you can have out here. The one that's showing is called the active image. And for the active image, down in the lower left, you'll see that there are document details. These details pertain to the image that you currently have open. By default, it shows you the document size and the document's compressed size, and also the zoom ratio that you have your document at. Right now, this is a rather large image, and I've got it displaying at 16.67% so that it fits within the window nicely and it's not taking up my whole screen while I'm showing you guys the interface. If I were to do it to 100%, we'd probably be staring at the middle of this mountain. You can change what details are shown simply by clicking on this. So it's showing me the document sizes, but I can also change it to any of these other options here. And you can play around with that and see what those kind of do for you. For the zoom, you can change it directly here. You can click on that. If I type in 100%, you'll see that indeed we are staring at the side of this mountain much more closely. Put it back to 16.67, and there we go. There's nothing special about 16.67, by the way. That's just what I happen to be putting that at. And the last little item down here, you may be wondering what this little arrow is. That looks strikingly similar to a share arrow on other programs. And that is exactly what it is. If you click on this, it'll allow you to share on Behance, which is Adobe's community sharing type of a site. If you're not familiar with Behance, you can look that up, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but that is basically where you can share and show your work within the Adobe community. Now, the next thing that I'll point out is the workspace that you're working in. Up here in the upper right, we have a little drop down you can see is labeled Essentials. Essentials is the default current workspace that Adobe's going to give, or that Photoshop's going to give you. You can change this to a variety of any other different workspaces. You can change it to if you're going to be working on photography specifically, if you're going to be working on digital painting, 3D items or 3D elements, whatever you're working on, you can have a kind of a preset setup. So for instance, if I'm working on 3D, these might be the things that I'm going to use more often. Essentials is just the basic, if you're going to do some basic image editing, this is most likely the tools you're going to need. You can also customize your workspace. I have one that's called JB Preferred, and you can see these are the items I use the most, and this is the setup that I like. So I customized it to my liking, and then I saved it. And the way you would do that essentially is by going to the new workspace. You can delete the workspace. If you change your essentials, starting in essentials, I could put lots of different stuff out here, change it around. Maybe you realize you wanted it back the way it was, and it'll allow you to reset that. Otherwise, if you create a new one, it'll ask you to do a name for the new workspace. You'll put in the name, you check a couple of options, and it'll show up in there. Once you do that, you can go to Window, and then you'll choose which windows you want open, and then you can drag them over into the dock. Now that I've talked about having a workspace, what is this stuff here that makes up your workspace? These are called the Photoshop Pallets. So you have specific palettes within your workspace. Essentials has a color palette, the tab of swatches. It's got adjustments, libraries, styles. These are the palettes. You also have what's called flyout palettes. And the flyout palettes are these smaller ones right here on the left side of it. When you click on a flyout palette, you'll see that it kind of flies out with whatever the options are. So it looks just like the palette, but it stays hidden. This is to kind of keep your workspace clean and less cluttered, so you can, you don't have a million things out there. I know I do on my workspace have a million things out there, but that's how I like it. And you could do it however you like it. You can also expand or contract them. If you expand, you could use these little double arrows here, and it'll just open the palettes that you have in your flyout palette bar. And you can make it bigger or smaller. A lot of these ones, you can set it up however you like it. Or you can have it completely collapsed like that. So it's really, Photoshop really allows you to customize your workspace to how you like it. You could do it with the same thing with the tools on the left. Bring it out, bring it in, whatever works best for you and what you're working on. One of the most important palettes, and probably is the most important palette in Photoshop, this is what defined this program from the beginning, is the layer palette. So you can see here I have the layers palette. There's a couple other things next to it, but the layers palette is where you have layers of different things. So whether it's images, effects, adjustments, lots of different things. The layers are the most powerful things that you have for editing your images. As an example, I've put together just a quick little image here. This isn't how the image started. This image started as a wintry mountain image. So I quickly went in and masked out that white sky and put an ocean behind there. And you can see over here I have a blue sky layer, and I have what I call it the highway layer that has this image. And then I have a couple of just effects just to kind of help make it look a little nicer. Nothing elaborate, but it shows you, kind of what you can do with layers just very basically. They also allow you to drag them around. I can stick the blue sky one on top or anywhere I want. I can move these adjustments around however I want. And that's just the beginning of what layers can do for you. And we'll talk more about that in another lesson. But for now, just know that this is where you're going to spend a lot of time looking while you're in Photoshop. And then down here at the bottom of the layers palette, you'll see, much like with the tools, how there's different options, you'll see options for whatever thing you currently have open. So for layers, these are your layer options. Basic things you have here, you can delete a layer, make a new layer. You can put layers in groups. I can click on that group right there, it makes a group folder, and I can stick things in a group. That helps you to organize so that you can keep your layers, in a way that's easy to find things. Once you start getting into complex image editing, you could end up with 100 layers. And then when you want to go find a specific layer, it can get kind of difficult. So it's good to start with the practice of just labeling your layers, grouping them in ways that make sense, and just keeping things organized in general. You've also got down here your fill and adjustment layers, masking, and effects. We can talk about those also in another lesson, but those are all your layer options. I think that really is going to cover this Photoshop main interface, at least at the basic level. So thank you for watching. Again, appreciate feedback. Let me know if I've missed anything or you'd just like to see something added or changed. Thank you.